So the Arab Spring is a term that's been used in December 2010, and it's called, like, it's based in the riots and civil wars and the protests that have been in the Arab states, mostly in the Middle East, which is a region in between Northern Africa and Western Asia.
Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about the causes that generated this revolutionary movement, or the riots and the protests that we can see in the map. We're going to start about the next slide, please. The Middle Eastern countries and the northern part of the country of Africa have been in a demographic time bomb. Their population between 1975 and the year 2005 spiked up from 150 million to over 300 million. So a lot of the states that are like in right now in the civil wars or have protests can't like control their political and economical demands by their populations. We can take an example by Egypt. Egypt, 2/3 of their populations are under 30 years old. So you can think about the demand that they need to work. The next topic is related to the first one. It's the unemployment issue. The Middle East has always had problems with religion. We can like concentrate this religion type because one of the countries with the most Christianism, like it's Israel, is concentrated here, and where all the countries they develop another religion. So the unemployment came when the majority of their youth started to go to university, and they started to see that they didn't have work. I mean, college graduates had to start working like cab drivers to sustain their family and give them the bread. The next topic is it's one of the topics that generate revolutionary movements around the world. That it's the dictatorships that are concentrated on this part of the world. We can have the example of Egypt, that his name is Hosni Mubarak. His dictatorship lasted 40 years. We can have the country of Libya, that was one of the more where the media attention gave because of the invasion of the United States Army. That was Muammar Gaddafi. Well, corruption. Corruption is part of the world. We can have like in any country and in any religion, there's going to be corruption. But the population is not going to be content when they see that the corruption is only for them, for the majority of the people, or for the people that don't have power. So the corruption here, they were generating a capitalism for their kings or their dictators or their government. Another one was the national appeal that everybody started to see. They started to fight for patriarchal movement. They started to wave their country's flag instead of starting to divide. Most of the revolutionary movements in history start to divide. They start to divide the country in north or south, or west or east. So this movement just wanted the dictatorship to end, so the country can like develop in the world. The next one was the leaderless revolt that the country saw in the parties that were attacking the government. Every movement has their leaders, but this movement didn't have their leaders. Everybody was attacking just to have their rights and to sustain their families. So the government started to kill the so-called leaders, but the leaders just came out of nowhere. There was like 5 leaders in a group. When in another revolution movements or in the political movement, the leaders, when they killed the leaders, a certain amount of time had to pass, and then another leader came, and then the movement just like got on the way. The social media. The social media helped them a lot because they would send messages to Facebook, or they have pages to Facebook or the other social networks to just to attack a certain place, and they would like confuse the state where they were attacked, they would send like 5 messages out, and they would have a code. We're going to attack the palace, we're going to attack here, we're going to attack here. So the force had to divide. So when they got there, they were just like, they were equal in force. And by the time that the reinforcements got there, the opposition already had like devoured that part of the demographic part. Other part is the mosques. The mosque is like the temple of the religion, and they are very, very religious over there. So they were making like their own little private meetings when they had to go like to what we call mass or the church service. So the state wouldn't attack there because they are very religious too. There was like their own mosque. But you have to see the intentions that they had when they had to stop their prayings to start like planning the way that they were going to attack the government. The other one was the state response. The state response was offered by part of their dictators and their kings. So some of the leaders would, in some cases, like put the police on them, and then they would put police brutality. They would start murdering. They would start incarcerating. They would start kidnapping. But in other times, they would just like panic and leave the country, go to Europe. Or in another situation, they would just like offer a piecemeal. But sometimes they would just like stay there and think that the movement would just disappear. The last point that we're going to talk is the contagious effect that the movement had. When they saw that Hosni Mubarak was the leader of Egypt, that he went down in just a period of 2 months. So he was one of the most powerful and the longest dictator that was there in the Middle Eastern part of the world and the Northern Africa. So when like countries like Yemen, Libya, Syria started to see that the Egyptians have overthrown their government, they're attacking, so we're going to attack too. And Egypt was the one that surpassed first.
Okay, well, the authoritarian region that these countries are into has a lack of transparency and a little respect of the rule of law and the civil rights. So the Arab governments fell into what is known as a legitimation crisis, because that is caused because of the loss of the trust and respect from the people, and that is completely necessary for effective governing. And this erosion, the regional legitimacy is like an important factor to consider to explain this movement, because what people wanted was, or the will was to bring down the regime they were living into. And talking about some statistics, we have that 80% of Egyptians and 66% of Lebanese is regarded democracy and economic prosperity as the goal of this movement. Before the Arab Spring started, only 8% of Egyptians defined themselves as Egyptians, and 81% of 81% defined themselves as Muslims. But after this movement started, the Egyptians started like thinking they were Egyptians in a 50%, 2% more than those that defined themselves as Muslims. In Iraq, the self-identification grew from 23% to 57%, and from 2003 to 2011. And among Saudis, this percentage changed from 17% from in 2004 to 46% in 2011. And while the Muslim identity fell from the 75% to 44%. Well, here we have like a list of 5 countries that have faced the worst violence since the movement started, and we have the recorded deaths during this protest. And there are other countries that doesn't exist like information, but here is only reflected that the recorded deaths and the real numbers are likely to be a lot higher. And all of these deaths are like the result of countries that are fighting for their rights, and it's one thing for another. They were killed because they wanted to fight for their what they believe for a change. They believe for in a change, and well, this is like the cost we have in searching democracy.
Okay, so I'm going to speak about the main case that it's Egypt. Egypt has had two revolutions in a time lapse of 2 years. The first one was in January 25th, where they outthrew Hosni Mubarak. That he had been the dictator for 40 years, and then after these 40 years, the Egyptians, as my partner said, they saw that Tunisia had outthrown their government, and they like gained faith and trust, so they decided to make the same thing. In the first one, which was in 2011, the first revolution, more than 100,000 people were injured and about 1,000 people were killed. The rioting was was mainly in Alexandria and Cairo. They were in the plazas, and just in Cairo they burned 90 police stations, the protesters. Cairo was defined as a war zone since they had a curfew and they couldn't be out because it was real dangerous all the city. And for the causes, the main causes were the poor government. Like they felt they were being mistreated. Like for 40 years, they had been like taken for less than they were actually. And then in July 30th, just 2 years after that, in 2013, Mohamed Morsi, took place for Mohamed Morsi took place for Hosni Mubarak after the coup d'état, and then in July 30, the General Abdul Fattah al-Sisi was the one that, because of the protesters that asked for a better government, the general took place of the acting president that was only for 2 years. And since 2013, Egypt has only had like an acting president while they solve their issues. So yes, in conclusion, we would say that this is a main issue that all the world should be concerned of, and we certainly hope that the wars in all the Arab states end sooner than later because of the major kills that it has caused.